Eli Thompson was a man who preferred the quiet of the open plains to the chatter of towns and villages. His ranch sat on the edge of the frontier, where the land stretched wide and the sky seemed endless. He rose with the sun every day, the soft light spilling across the rolling fields, and began his work before most people had even opened their doors. There was a rhythm to his life that he cherished: the lowing of cattle, the rustling of the wind through the tall grass, the sound of his own boots crunching against the dusty soil. He knew each corner of his land, each tree, each fence post, and each small creek. It was a life of simplicity, and Eli was content in its solitude. Though Eli was kind-hearted, he was painfully shy. He rarely spoke to visitors and often found himself tongue-tied in the presence of strangers. Women, especially, made him uneasy, for he had never known how to bridge the gap between polite greeting and meaningful conversation. He had thought about companionship many times in the long evenings by the fireplace, imagining conversations that never happened, smiles he never shared, and laughter that stayed locked in his mind. Yet, despite the quiet loneliness, he had never forced himself to step beyond the boundaries of his ranch. The animals were his closest friends, and their loyalty and simplicity suited him just fine. One crisp morning, Eli saddled his horse and rode toward the far edge of his property to check the water supply. The land here met the forest that separated his ranch from Apache territory. It was a place of beauty and caution, where the trees grew thick and the wildlife moved unseen among the shadows. Eli knew the land well, and he had always respected the people who lived beyond it. His encounters with travelers and traders had been brief and polite, nothing more. As he approached a small creek, he noticed movement among the trees. At first, he thought it was deer, or perhaps a wandering coyote. But then he realized the figures were human. A group of women emerged, their movements graceful yet confident. Eli stopped mid-step, unsure if he should call out or retreat. The women were unarmed, and their expressions were calm but serious. There was something in the way they regarded him, an intensity that made him both curious and nervous. "Good morning," one of them said in a clear, measured voice. Eli blinked, startled by the directness. "We hope we are not disturbing you." Eli's voice caught in his throat. He opened his mouth, but only a soft, "Good morning," came out. The women exchanged subtle glances, and for a moment, silence hung in the air like the mist over the creek. After a moment, the tallest of the women stepped closer. Her eyes were steady, filled with a calm certainty that Eli found unusual. "We have come with a request," she said. "It is not simple, but it is important to us. We wish for a child. We believe you could help." Eli's heart skipped a beat, and he nearly fell from his horse. He stared at the women, trying to make sense of their words. A child? They meant him? How could this be? His mind raced, and the world seemed to narrow until there was only the sound of his own breathing and the soft rustle of the trees. I don't understand," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's expression softened. "We know this is unexpected. You may feel unsure or frightened. That is why we came gently. We only ask because we believe in your character. You are kind, gentle, and strong in ways that matter. We think you could be a good father." Eli's mind spun. 1,000 thoughts collided at once: fear, confusion, disbelief, and a strange, growing sense of responsibility. He had never imagined being asked for something so profound. His life had been orderly, simple, predictable, and now it felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He wanted to respond, to say something meaningful, but his shyness trapped him in silence. His voice would not obey. His thoughts scattered too quickly for words to follow. The women waited patiently, their presence calm yet insistent. They were not demanding, not rushing, simply offering an opportunity, and yet the weight of their request pressed heavily on him. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice trembling. The woman smiled gently. "Because we see what others cannot. You are honest, and you are careful. You respect life and understand its value. These are rare qualities. You have not yet known how deeply you can touch another life, but we believe you can." Eli looked down at his hands, rough and calloused from years of labor. He had never considered that someone might see greatness in him, let alone rely on it to bring life into the world. He felt the weight of their trust and the enormity of the choice they were offering. The world seemed both larger and smaller at once, the vast plains stretching endlessly, yet the moment so intimate, so personal, that it threatened to overwhelm him. I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice low and uncertain. I've never been asked something like this before." "That is understandable," the woman replied. "It is not a simple request, and it is not meant to be easy. We do not expect you to answer immediately. Take your time. Think carefully. But know that we do not ask lightly. We see something in you that we believe can change lives." Eli nodded, though his mind was a storm of questions. How could he take on such responsibility? Was he capable of it? Did he even want it? And yet, beneath the fear, a flicker of something else stirred a curiosity, a sense that this could be more than a challenge, perhaps even a chance to become part of something larger than himself. The women lingered for a moment longer, offering soft words of reassurance. Then, without another word, they turned and disappeared into the trees as quietly as they had come, leaving Eli alone by the creek. The wind rustled through the leaves, carrying with it the faint scent of the forest and the echo of the request that now hung over him like a shadow. Eli stayed on his horse for a long time, staring at the spot where the women had vanished. He could not remember the last time anyone had looked at him with such certainty, such hope, such expectation. The encounter left him trembling, not from fear alone, but from the weight of possibility. For the first time in his life, he felt the enormity of a choice laid out before him, a choice that could change everything. When he finally rode back toward his ranch, the familiar sights offered little comfort. The fences, the grazing cattle, the small barn, all were the same. Yet everything had changed. He felt both grounded and unmoored, as if the quiet life he had known for years might now stretch into something entirely different. As he worked that evening, repairing a fence and feeding the cattle, Eli's mind wandered back to the women's words. He thought of their calm faces, the way they had looked at him with quiet certainty. He thought of the responsibility they were entrusting to him, and the fear mingled with a strange, unexpected hope. He realized that his life, once so predictable, now had the potential for new meaning. He could choose to remain as he had always been, or he could step into something entirely unknown, something that might require courage and change. That night, Eli sat by the fireplace, the flames casting shadows that danced across the wooden walls of his small home. He poured a cup of coffee and stared into the flickering light, thinking about the women, about the child they hoped for, and about the man he might become. His shyness, once a shield, now felt like a barrier he might need to break. His heart pounded with both fear and possibility. Sleep came fitfully, and when he awoke the next morning, the weight of the decision remained. The sun rose over the plains, golden light spilling across the fields, and Eli knew that nothing would ever feel the same again. The quiet life he had cherished was still there, but now it was mingled with the echo of the women's request, and with it, a sense that life might offer him something he had never dared to imagine, a chance to connect, to care, and perhaps to love in a way he had never known. He saddled his horse again, riding slowly along the fence line, thinking about what steps he might take next. The path ahead was uncertain, and fear lingered at the edges of his mind. Yet, beneath it all, a quiet spark of courage had begun to glow. Eli Thompson, the shy rancher, had been asked to do something extraordinary, and though he did not yet know the answer, he could feel that his life was on the verge of change. Eli woke early the next morning, the rising sun spilling a soft orange glow across the plains. The previous day's encounter with the Apache women weighed heavily on his mind. He walked slowly to the barn, feeding the cattle with hands that trembled slightly. Not from exhaustion, but from a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Every sound, the lowing of the cows, the creaking of the barn doors, the rustle of the wind reminded him that life continued around him, as steady and calm as it always had. Yet Eli felt a quiet tremor within himself, the sense that nothing would ever feel the same again. He mounted his horse and rode toward the edge of the forest where he had met the women. The path was familiar, yet it felt different this time, as if the land itself was waiting to see what he would do. He thought about their words, about the trust and hope in their eyes. They had asked him to be part of something profound, something that required courage he had not known he possessed. Eli had spent much of his life avoiding attention, hiding behind his work and the solitude of the ranch. Now, he faced a choice that demanded he step forward, even though every instinct told him to retreat. As he approached the clearing where the women had appeared, he saw them again. This time, there was a sense of calm familiarity in their presence, as if they had been expecting him. The tallest woman stepped forward first, her eyes warm and patient. "You have come," she said simply, as if noting the obvious. "We are glad." Eli dismounted, feeling the weight of his own uncertainty. "About what you asked, about the child." His voice faltered, then steadied. "I do not know if I can do this, if I am the right person. I have always been shy, always careful, always alone. I do not know what it means to be part of something like this." The woman nodded gently. "It is natural to feel uncertain. We do not ask you to answer quickly. This is not a choice to be made lightly. But we also believe that the measure of a person is not only in what they have done, but in what they are willing to do. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite it." Her words stirred something deep within Eli. He thought of his quiet days on the ranch, the endless hours of solitude, and the longing he had kept hidden, even from himself. He realized that his fear had kept him from experiencing the full richness of life. Perhaps this request, so unusual and daunting, was an opportunity to step beyond the boundaries he had always set for himself. Over the next several days, Eli began visiting the women's camp more regularly. He approached cautiously, at first observing from a distance, learning about their daily lives, and gaining an understanding of the world they lived in. He watched them work with skill and care, tending to their families, managing their land, and supporting each other with a quiet strength that impressed him. Each visit, he grew a little braver, a little more comfortable in their presence. Slowly, he began to speak with them, at first in small, hesitant phrases, and then in longer conversations. He learned their stories, their hopes, and their fears. He shared some of his own life as well, about the ranch, the land, and the quiet routines that had shaped him. The women listened with respect, never judgment, and gradually, Eli felt a connection forming, a bond that transcended words. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with shades of gold and pink, Eli sat by the fire with the women. The air was cool, and the smell of burning wood mingled with the scent of the forest. One of the younger women, her face lit by the glow of the flames, spoke softly. "We do not ask this of many men," she said. "We ask because we see the goodness in your heart. That is rare, and that is why we hoped for you." Eli looked into the fire, thinking about the words, thinking about the life he had always known. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose beyond the routine of work and solitude. He felt a responsibility not only to them but to himself, to rise to the challenge of being part of something bigger than his own small world. He realized that he wanted to help, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to contribute, to care, and to connect. As days turned into weeks, Eli's visits became a regular part of his life. He helped with daily tasks around the camp, teaching skills from his ranch life, how to manage livestock, how to mend fences, and how to track the weather and seasons. In return, the women taught him about their traditions, their stories, and their ways of living in harmony with the land. Eli began to feel that he was no longer just an observer. He was part of their world, and they were part of his. Through these interactions, Eli's shyness began to ease. He discovered that his quiet nature could be a strength, allowing him to listen, observe, and understand in ways others could not. He also realized that courage was not about grand gestures or heroic feats. It was about showing up, even when afraid, and giving oneself fully to the moment. Each day brought new challenges and new joys, and Eli found himself growing in confidence, feeling more alive than he had in years. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the camp, Eli rode back to the clearing where he had first met the women. They greeted him with smiles that were calm, yet full of warmth. "You have come far," said the tallest woman. "These are the qualities that matter most." Eli dismounted, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. I still do not know everything," he admitted, "but I want to try. I want to help. I want to be part of what you hope for, if you will have me." The women's faces softened with gentle approval. There was no pressure, no demand. Only the quiet understanding that he had chosen to engage fully, to step into a role that required care, respect, and commitment. In that moment, Eli felt a profound sense of belonging, a connection that went beyond words. As the weeks passed, Eli continued to build trust and friendship with the women. He became involved in their daily lives, offering guidance when needed, learning from them, and sharing laughter and stories around the fire. He discovered a sense of fulfillment that he had never known on the ranch alone, the joy of giving, of being needed, and of forming a bond that transcended the ordinary. Through this journey, Eli realized that life's greatest moments often came from the unexpected, the unusual, and the challenging. His shyness, once a barrier, had become a bridge to deeper understanding and connection. The request that had first filled him with fear now opened a path to growth, friendship, and purpose. One evening, as he rode back to his ranch, under a sky painted with stars, Eli felt a quiet peace. He had been transformed not by grand gestures or adventure, but by the simple act of choosing to show up, to trust, and to care. The Apache women had asked him for something extraordinary, and in responding, he had discovered a part of himself he had never known a man capable of courage, kindness, and love. Eli's life on the ranch continued, but it was no longer the same. The solitude remained, but it was enriched by the bonds he had formed and the trust he had earned. He knew that the path ahead would not always be easy, that challenges would come, and that patience and care would always be required. Yet he also knew that he was no longer alone, that he had stepped beyond fear and uncertainty, and that life, in all its quiet beauty and surprising turns, had opened to him in ways he had never imagined. And so, as the plains stretched endlessly before him and the wind whispered through the tall grass, Eli rode with a new sense of purpose. The shy rancher who had once been unsure of his place in the world had become a man capable of connection, courage, and unexpected joy. The women, the land, and the possibilities that lay ahead had changed him forever. And in the quiet of the open plains, Eli Thompson knew that he had found something far greater than he had ever expected, a life filled with meaning, trust, and hope.